Hello, everyone. I, of course, am Christine Gritmon, and this is Let's Talk About Brand. I do this show every single Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Guess what we talk about? But the great thing is, every single week it is a different topic about branding. Today we are talking about branding through a pivot. Just so you know, every single Tuesday on Twitter, we also have a Twitter chat called Chat About Brand. And that chat is on Tuesdays at noon Eastern. I like keeping it simple with the noon thing. And that is always on the same topic as that week's show. It's just without a guest. So we get the topic rolling. We talk about it as a community on Twitter on Tuesdays on Chat About Brand. And then you come here and I interview an expert on that subtopic on Fridays. Another thing I want to let you know, by the way, is that both Chat About Brand and Let's Talk About Brand, we have a community on Patreon, and I love my Patreon members. They are fabulous. You can be one of them too, so just check that out. I can provide a link as soon as this is off, but it's pretty easy to find. It's patreon.com/Let's Talk About Brand. Oh, all right. So without any further ado, let's get to this week's topic. We are talking about branding a pivot. And so a pivot, when we talk about a pivot in this context, we mean, you know, you're rolling along, your career, your job, your life, it's going whatever. And then whether via decision or happenstance or whatever, you change directions in some way. A lot of times it's you're in a particular job and you realize, you know, I'm really into this other thing instead. But that can be very difficult because a lot of times it feels like you're starting from scratch. Like all that know, like, and trust, all that knowledge, all that expertise, it feels like you're just leaving it behind to start from scratch. But you really do not have to. I've done this, and our guest today, Cass McMann, has done this as well, of figuring out how your personal brand can help you. You can leverage your personal brand to help lend credibility to that new shift so that you're not starting from scratch. You're coming at your new venture with the expertise of the seasoned professional that you actually are, even if it is in a slightly different arena. So I'm going to bring Cass on. Cass has done her own pivot recently, which we will talk about, and she will be talking us through how to do it yourself. Hello, Cass. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? I'm so glad to be here, Christine. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be so fun.
As I said before we went live, I always tell people to watch the show, but this week in particular, I've had a lot of direct conversations where I'm like, you need to watch this one. Because a lot of people, especially since the pandemic started and all of that, people are really reassessing things, either by necessity or even by choice. I would love to hear, first of all, tell us your story. Tell us about your own pivot that you've very recently made.
Yeah, I would love to. So, like a lot of people during the pandemic, things really changed for me. Um, so I have a sales and marketing background. I started out in hospitality, and really worked my way into the corporate event space and working for a destination management company. And during the pandemic, when events were not happening, we couldn't meet in person. It gave me a lot of time to reflect, but then also to just really reestablish what I found as valuable as and important. I think a lot of us were at home and paying attention to maybe things in a little different way, specifically, racial unrest and injustice in the world. And I found myself on a meeting with all of my teammates and realized that they didn't really have the same tools and skills to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion that I had. And I realized that really a lot of my life had been leading up to this moment. And so I just started talking and I started sharing my experience and sharing some of my knowledge. I have a degree in women's and gender studies, and things that I'm just personally interested in really started to bridge its way into my work life. And so organizationally, I really saw a need there that was not being met. And so I just kind of took the leap and decided to double down on what I already knew and started a master's at the University of Oklahoma, go Sooners. And here I am starting my own consultancy doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work, something that doesn't seem naturally connected to events and hospitality, but definitely my experience there has helped me in creating experiences for people around who they are. So that's what I do.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
like that. Creating experiences for people around who they are. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive into that a little bit
Sure.
deeper about
Yeah.
how you were able to put yourself, because some people, they'd wait until after that degree program was finished or something, or maybe they would take an entry level job in human resources or something. Like they would knock themselves down. Instead, you
Mm-hmm.
said, boom, I'm a consultant. I head a consultancy because you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you present that you can do it? How are you presenting that effectively in a way where people are realizing, even though this is a new venture, you are not a freaking beginner?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with telling my story and telling it well, and owning that authentically. There's just so many things that I would read or try to understand about who we are, that I just kind of made the assumption throughout, my 20s and 30s that everyone was interested in this. And then I realized that not everyone is interested in it. So I am positioned uniquely to um, be here in this space. And so rather than waiting until the degree was finished, the decision was actually made for me because since events weren't happening, I was furloughed and then eventually laid off. And I just jumped right in and kind of never gave myself space to talk myself out of it. I just said, this is my gut, this is my knowing, this is what I am really feeling called and drawn to do. So I'm just going to do it. I didn't give myself any space to talk myself out of it. I didn't really consult anybody to or get their approval. I just was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be full all the way in. A little bit because I had to, because here we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I was without really another option. But I was okay with that. I was like, you know what? This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to go forward.
Now, this strikes me to your point about your calling and your knowing and
Mm-hmm.
responding to that. It sounds like this transition likely would have wound up happening at some point, even if you hadn't had, events stop and been furloughed and then laid off. But let's talk about that knowing and that listening, because I'm sure a lot of people, when they're in a position where they're uncomfortable and they're maybe not loving what they do, sometimes they'll make the wrong pivot, or they'll
Mm-hmm.
consider making a pivot that ultimately later on they're like, oh, thank God I didn't have the guts to go for it, because that would have been a mess. I was just unhappy. So how
Yeah.
do you parse out the difference between something just being different versus something being a calling? Because I love the way you phrase that.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think, well, first I want to reframe the like right versus wrong conversation. I think on our life journeys, there's really no right or wrong way to make your life. There's decisions that are easier than others, there's things that have more or less consequence, but you're really never going to make a wrong choice because most of us are doing our best genuinely and we're making the right choice with the amount of information that we had at the time. There's that classic saying of hindsight is 2020, right? And if I would have known then what I know now, then I maybe would have chosen differently. But the reality is I knew as much as I could, and so I made the right choice. I think also like it really takes a lot of self-discovery, a lot of good therapy, a lot of good understanding of who you are, to know what your knowing is. A lot of us have been taught to not trust our gut, not trust our instincts, not really lean on what we know. And so it makes it harder to really build up that confidence there. But when you kind of peel away those layers, peel away the things that are a challenge for you or barriers to you saying yes to that call, then it makes it a little bit easier. I would also, just practically speaking, make if you have been thinking about doing something, or you started in your 20s and you were like, man, I really love pottery, and so I'm going to be an artist. And you go through your entire life, even though you're working and maybe you become an executive, maybe you do something else, but that pottery like is so a part of you. That is your thing. The longer that it stays with you and the more you hear that, and you're like, when you're times of stress or discomfort, you come back to it, that's your thing. That's your thing. And don't be afraid to lean into that just because the world may tell you that that isn't the right thing. That's the right thing for you, and that's amazing and okay.
So that is huge. The fear around, you may feel this calling, you may know
Yeah.
that this is your thing, but people are scared to follow it. And a lot of why they're scared to follow it is oftentimes because they say, I've spent the past 20 years building up a career and a reputation and my expertise in,
Mhm.
say, the events industry. Now I'm going to throw it all away to be a potter like that. I won't have stability. I won't have predictability. I'm going to be, on the streets. How can you get past that? Not only in terms of fear, but also in terms of, as we discussed before, kind of leveraging what you've done before
Mhm. Mhm.
into the next phase, because that's something you've done really beautifully. You are not coming at this as, a newbie. So how can we make those connections for ourselves and fight through that fear and realize we're going to be okay?
Yeah, fear is real. Let's just give honor to that. Being scared is very real and it's very felt, and I don't want to by any means minimize that. And you can do it anyway. I think that being afraid is can be something that holds you back, but it can also be a great motivator because you want to push through that fear and you know that there's something better for you on the other side. One thing that I've really utilized is, in my sales and marketing background, utilizing LinkedIn specifically and social media was something that I got really good at. And really posting every day and making sure that I, built a good following, and really leaning on that network to be able to, reinvent myself and reinvent my personal brand in this space. The first consulting job that I got was actually from, I saw someone on a panel similar like this, and I reached out on LinkedIn and saw that we had a lot of the same connections. She has an event and education background as well. We were a part of some of the same associations. And so it was just a natural kind of thing. And she was doing diversity, equity, inclusion work as well. So I reached out to her and just asked her a few questions. And now we work together on a regular basis. Hi, Melissa, if you're watching. Like it just was a natural progression, because you have to realize there's other people out there who are making these same changes. There's you're not the only one who is going through this new reinvention of yourself. There's people who you already know who may have already been interested in the same thing and are changing, and they make this huge decision, and you can make that decision and run alongside each other and make it just a little bit less fearful and less scary if you're doing it together.
Love that. So now you went through a shift that is actually pretty common of some pivots, which is you've gone
Mhm.
from um, working in the event industry to defining your own
Mhm.
thing. Did you own your own company before already in
I
events?
did not.
So you
I
went
did
from
not.
being an
I went from
employee.
100% an employee. I was a cog on the wheel, had, the infrastructure and the processes and the office to go to and all of those things, to here I am in my office at the house.
So, of course, personal branding and the way a lot of people come at personal branding when they're an employee versus when they are the business,
Mhm.
it's a little bit different. There's a little bit more on it. There's a little bit of a different way of defining it. So, can you talk us through kind of a little bit, sort of how you handled and conducted your personal brand before, what it
Mhm.
was, what that even means to you as a term, and
Yeah.
then how you have done it, because you're beautifully branded now for Know Better, Do Better, and
Thank
as
you.
yourself. So talk us through a little bit about that transition of what a personal brand even meant.
Yeah, I had a someone who the company that I worked previously for, he gave me some really great sound advice. He said, "You never work for a company, you always work for yourself. You represent a company," which applies both in the entrepreneur, solopreneur space as well as in the corporate space, right? So my personal brand was always based in authenticity, always based in genuine connection, a personal connection with people. I am very big on do what you say what you mean. Your no's mean no, and your yes means yes. And that's always been a part of who I am and how I show up authentically, no matter where I've worked. And that really helped me in this pivot into my own brand because I was able to maintain that. And I've been able to really lean that in, and also representing a company, I can almost parse out my individual part versus my own versus my individualness from my brand as the business, right? Like I still keep that same mentality of, I represent the company, which I also happen to own now, but I also work for myself, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Sorry about that. Yes,
This is okay.
yes, it absolutely does. And I love that about you never work for the company. You work for yourself. You are representing the company.
Yeah.
And now what you are representing is different now. I think that even
Mhm.
if someone is transferring from being an employee of one thing to being a different type of employee, or from owning one type of business to owning another type of business, there's still that element of worrying about the brand. Like, I
Yeah.
built the brand on being this, and now I'm trying to sell this as my brand. And so I love the comment about the thread of authenticity that has always been there. What are some ways that people can communicate a shift like that? Because if you've done a good job to begin with, people have a version of you in their heads, right? So
Yeah.
what are some good ways to communicate that shift really clearly so that people know what to know you for now?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So some ways that you can communicate that shift clearly. I think I came out the gate with a really strong brand presence, right? I did the back end work. I hired an amazing photographer to do my headshots. I made sure that I thought strategically about what my brand colors were going to be. I developed a logo that works for me and that fits in with my company name, Know Better, Do Better. So for me, that brand and that transition, I came out of the gate pretty strong. I'm not saying that not everybody is able to do that. I actually was lucky enough to have like some financing and things like that that helped me to move that needle. So when I started shifting my brand, I had already really thought about what it's going to look like and feel like, especially in an online presence. And so when you see my logo, you're seeing it very strong and pointed and specific. And so just understanding that that was really important to me. And so the content that I'm changing, that I'm producing is changing. But really what I was talking about online and the the um the value that I placed on what I was saying didn't change that much. So I actually honestly forgot your question, but I hope I answered it. So I think I think the biggest thing is, the biggest hurdle I had to overcome was having it to look and be perfect, right? I just made the choice. I just made the choice. I think that perfection is the opposite of done. So
Yeah.
if you always want it to be perfect, you're never going to get anything accomplished. And I also accepted the fact that your brand is going to change over the course of the life cycle of your business. Your offerings may change, And so what I put out now in 5 years, should change. It should grow. It should ebb and flow, and it's not going to be the same. And that's expected. If you look at the major brands in the world, they do that as well. And so it's a lot of it is dictated by the market and what you're offering. So just lean into that and just start. Just start. That's
Just
it
start.
sounds very simple, but it's also extremely complicated.
It's the hardest thing to do a lot
Yeah.
of times. I
Yeah.
literally just got off a conversation with somebody all about that, about just do it. Don't wait till all your ducks are in a row. They never will be. Just put things out there and then start lining up your ducks after the fact. Once you know
It's
where they're
kind of
going.
like it's kind of like having children. Everyone's like, I need to have ABC XYZ before I have kids, and you're like, none of that is ever going to be perfect. You're never going to have enough time, money, energy. Like you're just, and this is entrepreneurship. That's what it is. You're literally birthing something out of nothing, and so you just got to kind of get going.
Absolutely. I love the way you phrased that. Now, for your own pivot, I would imagine in addition to what you're doing changing, I would imagine the audience also changed to some degree. So how did you handle that? The fact that who you were talking to, or at least the context you were talking to them in, is now different. How did you navigate that shift?
Yeah, I think I'm still navigating it, if I'm being really 100% honest. I think that finding your people online and finding your niche is something that as business owners you really have to always hone and lean into. So I'm still navigating finding that specific sweet spot. But I think really what I've learned and is that some of the people who were in my audience that I maybe was less engaged with are now the people who are still in my audience and are more engaged with, right? I think that you never really know how wide your reach is because there's only a certain amount of people that you actively engage with on a regular basis. And so when you just kind of when I started putting more things out there, more content out there that really fit what I was doing as know better, do better in my business, I got the same amount of responses and the same amount of interaction. It was just different people. And so, really knowing that my people were kind of already in my circle, they just weren't interested in what I used to be doing, but now they're interested in this has really been an eye opener for me.
That's something that I'm actually going through with the
Are
coach
you?
right now.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize. So I've been in business for 5 years. So May of 2016, I left.
Congratulations. That's like the marker, right? 5 years. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I left
Yeah.
a totally different career, leveraged my personal brand into starting my own business in a different arena, but something that I had a reputation for being good at my old job. And I can mark several solid rebrands. So there was and different audiences. So first I launched, and so the whole first year or so, my branding was kind of a mess, honestly. I wasn't giving it a ton of attention because I was like, well, people know me.
Mm-hmm.
Then May of 2017, I went to Social Media Marketing World and I learned a ton, and I was like, all right, I'm pulling this together. So it got a rebrand then. Then there were several mini evolutions, but I did a huge brand evolution last August. And a lot of people are like, was it that big a change? I'm like, you don't even know because you've seen me so much more since the rebrand.
Yeah.
And even now, the thing that I'm going through with the coach right now is I had previously been working with tiny mom and pop businesses and the owners of those tiny mom and pop businesses. I still do that work, but now I also have offerings for, I really want to do a lot of branding work with professionals, including fellow marketers, but professionals of all sorts. And I was being encouraged to create some really high ticket offerings. And I was like, I don't have the audience who would pay for high ticket offerings. I don't have the audience who'll pay for my existing offerings half the time. And she said, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You just haven't given them anything to buy
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
She's like, you
So
definitely have people who would spend 10 grand on, doing a rebrand for them. It's the fact that, you haven't given them that level of offering does not change the fact that you have them in your network already.
Right.
And it's weird to think of that.
It really is. And I think that could be a whole nother show about how we devalue the product that we're putting out there because we don't see the value in ourselves a lot of time. I think that is the hardest part is, am I charging enough? I know what I need to make in order to sustain my life and all of these things, but am I charging enough? One of my best friends sent me a meme and she's like, the yesterday's price is not today's price. And it's okay to raise your prices and to raise your awareness because you know more now. You're more marketable now, or just have different offerings for different levels. Like you have to have that. You go to Starbucks and you can get a $2 coffee, but you can also spend $7 on one cup of coffee, really. And they have multiple offerings for multiple price points. We all need to be the same. Some people are over here eating off the dollar menu, and some people over here ordering, high-end catering. Like we have to be able to match all of those things.
Sometimes those people are even the same people. I mean, I've
That
talked to
part.
people where when it comes to their social media, they want to order off the dollar menu, but then I see them, spending on different types of professional development. So it really
Mm-hmm.
does all depend. You probably do have the people. You just need to give them something for them.
Correct.
So I would love to invite anyone who's watching to feel free to ask any questions at this point. We're
Yeah.
going to be wrapping up soon, but I'm going to leave you with this final question from me, Cass, which is, if someone is feeling that calling, if someone has made the
Mm-hmm.
decision of, yes, I'm doing this, I'm going to make this pivot, I did this, I'm going for it, I'm going to do that. What are some of the first things that they should, because we can get so lost in the weeds of that, of what is this transition going to look like? What do you think are some of the key things to have figured out from the get-go, the place to start?
I think you already started because you know this is what you want to do. So you're really in a really great space. I have found a lot of value in finding other people who are going through the same transition. I have a dear friend. We're supposed to have dinner next week, and she launched her solopreneurship around the same time that I launched mine. And so running alongside each other, seeing her growth, bouncing ideas off of her, makes me feel a lot less alone in this endeavor, because I think a lot of people just don't really understand the things that come along with it and the stresses and the second guessing and all of that. And so having someone who you can send a quick text about, like, I don't know if this is a good idea, and you know that they're going to be like, do it anyway and push you to be better. I think that's a great place to start. I think the consistency, you just have to be consistent. I incorporated my LLC, I think, in January of last year, and I didn't really get started until the middle of the year. But I already was building clients and building space for myself. And so you have to be consistent and just keep going, and give yourself time. It's going to take time, and that's okay. Nothing happens overnight. I read somewhere, that you're not paying me for the 30 minutes that it takes me to do this thing. You're paying me for the 15 years of experience it took me to learn how to do it in 30 minutes. And so understand that you're not going to learn everything overnight, and it's going to be great, and you're going to keep going. And if you have to change your mind, that's okay too.
Love that. That's a good point. Not only are you not stuck in the old place, you're not stuck in the new place either. It can change and evolve. Again, I've had multiple pivots of what exactly I do in my business. I used to do done for you social for local restaurants. Now I'm helping professionals brand themselves. Very
Mm-hmm.
different. It's been a journey. Kathy Ann Fletcher has the question. She said, thanks for this. It was great. But she also wants to know, what was the biggest fear pivoting and your
Mm-hmm.
biggest joy having done so?
Okay, biggest fear, truth, Kathy Ann, money. Where's this money going to come from? How am I going to maintain my life? I like to wear good makeup. What am I going to do? Like all these things, right? it's the fear of like, where's my provision going to come from? And so that has been like the biggest fear. And I would also piggyback, the biggest joy is finding, like, building my life around what I want to do. From here, I'm going to go and, take the kid to the doctor and take the afternoon off. But tomorrow morning, I know I have to get up and I have to do some work. And really having the flexibility is the biggest joy. Now there's late nights, there's hard things, there's, you got to grind a little bit, but being able to build my life around the grind or building the grind around my life rather than building the other way has been game changer. So if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, I highly recommend. I can work from anywhere. The mentor that I met, our first meeting, I was on the beach and I was like, hey, I still want to take this meeting, but I decided to run to the beach this weekend. Is that okay? And she was here for it. Like, just if there's a Wi-Fi connection, I can book a business, right? That's amazing. It's the biggest joy.
I love that. We do want to, sorry, I know we're over the half hour, but
it's okay. I'll keep talking.
I do have a quick question here from Anne, and she wants to know if you're using online marketing funnels, like Facebook ads leading to an ebook or course or consulting packages or anything like that to reach your audience, or if you're finding them another way.
So I've been lucky enough to reach my audience organically. I am looking into doing some more pay to play things like that, but I really haven't had to yet, which is, I've just been really fortunate that way. I think that there's a lot of people out there right now, and this is my opinion, there's a lot of people who are pay to play, like, here, I'm going to tell you how to funnel your marketing and all that other kind of stuff. That to me, like, comes across a little inauthentic. I think that it works for some, but the client that I'm trying to reach, especially doing DE&I and belonging work, they need to see me and not just an automated system. And so I've leaned against that. Now, I will say some of the tools that they have are extremely helpful, but that's not really where I'm finding my niche.
Yeah, it sounds like you already had your network, you already had your audience, and you are just now making it clear what they need to know you for. And that is beautiful. All right. So, Cass, tell us where people can and should find you.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is always the best place to find me. You can just search Cass McMann. I would love the follow and the connection. I also, knowbetterdobetter.co is my website. So if you want to book some time with me, and you can do a 30-minute consultation, or just if you want to talk and ask me questions, I'm always available for that. You can also find me on Twitter, McMann Cass. You can find me on Instagram, Know Better to Do Better. And hopefully Q1 next year, you'll find me on a podcast that I will be starting.
Ooh, exciting. Well, thank you so much for being on today, Cass. This was fabulous, and I wish you the best of continued luck in your
Thank you so much. Christy, thank you for this platform. It's so amazing. I love listening and learning, and it's been an honor to talk with you today.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you who were here today. Again, we are here every single Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And next week, we have on Tuesday, our Chat About Brand, Tuesday at noon on Twitter, is going to be all about monetizing your brand, which is always a good thing to be able to do, because otherwise, why the heck are we doing it? And then on Friday, our guest on that topic is going to be my friend Joseline Main. And I actually met him through all sorts of Twitter spaces. He is like the king of Twitter spaces. But we're not going to be talking about Twitter spaces. We're talking about monetizing your brand so that you can actually benefit from that. Again, every Tuesday, 12 noon, Chat About Brand on Twitter. Every Friday, 12 noon, Let's Talk About Brand right here wherever you're watching. In fact, let us know where you were watching today and if you were live or on the replay. And thanks so much for being here. And thanks to my Patreon members too. Bye.